and welcome to the Billowing Hilltop podcast. I'm joined in the command pod by Graeme. Hello, Graeme.
Hello, Mike.
Now, we have a reader, Thomas. Hello, Thomas. I posted some stuff on social media about this new Pathfinder campaign. Thomas asked, are we going to talk about the difference between D&D, which I infer from his question he is used to, and Pathfinder, which he is not? And
what a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, Thomas. No, it hadn't occurred to us. But now it has. Or rather, you have, Thomas, spurred us into action. So Graeme and I are going to sit and chat, not in a particularly organised way, although I have got a couple of notes to make sure we cover most stuff, about D&D and the differences between D&D and Pathfinder and kind of how Pathfinder works. Before we get into it, I think it should be clear that we aren't veteran Pathfinder 2 players. Graeme has GM'd, right?
Yes.
Abomination Vaults. We should talk about your impressions of GMing Pathfinder 2 from that. I think that would be quite useful. And then we'll run through the kind of key differences and the similarities. In fact, we'll start with the similarities. But we're all relatively unfamiliar. And so as you listen to this new adventure, we have recorded some already. We talk through rules, new things as we encounter them. So hopefully that will help with getting used to what's different. And this we should have published alongside that first episode of the actual adventure path. So hopefully this will be helpful. One thing that you may be wondering, readers, is why we're playing Pathfinder 2 instead of D&D. The key thing here is that we've played 20 levels of D&D 5th edition as a result of doing the Age of Worms. And one of the things that drove us to do the Age of Worms and to run a 20-level campaign was to take, as it were, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition out for a test, not a test drive, but out for a spin and see how it played over that full range. So we've kind of done it.
Yeah.
And I think we've discussed a lot in older episodes of the Age of Worms podcast where we felt there were bits of the 5th edition rule set which we found a little bit limiting or made gameplay a little bit similar or didn't seem to sort of vary all that much between levels. We don't know that the Pathfinder 2 addresses those questions perfectly, but this is part of what we're
trying to learn.
Exactly. This is part of what we're trying to learn.
And I think we also have a hankering back to probably 3.5 Pathfinder 1E.
Yes.
Is possibly the era of Dungeons and Dragons that we felt most at home with. We spent, about 20 years playing those editions of the game, something like that.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we played old D&D, OD&D, first edition D&D. We were kids. You don't worry about rules and you argue about rules, but you don't think about rules, structure and architecture and that kind of stuff. Well, at least we didn't, not that much.
But we did argue about
third
rules.
Edition seemed to codify a lot of stuff, but then it became clear as we went on that there were limitations to third edition, and then Pathfinder, we felt, addressed a lot of those limitations, especially about making things interesting for characters at all levels, which is something we might come back to when we talk about Pathfinder 2. There is an episode, I think it's from September 2024, called Rules of the Game, a bonus episode during our Age of Worms campaign, where I sat with Jason Bullman, who designed Pathfinder 2 and Pathfinder 1. He's the director of games at Paizo still, talking about, as it were, the philosophy of developing Pathfinder 2 and the ancestry, where the core ideas came from and what he felt needed addressing in order to make the game that he really wanted, which is Pathfinder 2. But you might find that interesting. Where do we start, Graeme? Do you want to talk about what you think about Pathfinder in general from GMing a little bit of it, or should we talk about the similarities with D&D? Or
maybe we should start with where it's similar. I mean, obviously they have a common root, don't they?
Common ancestor.
Yes.
What was Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition, the first kind of D20 rule set?
Yeah, and both have evolved from there, so there's lots of similarities. It's a fantasy adventuring game. It's D20 based, has all those similarities, classes, levels, hit points, all the sort of sacred cows, I guess, that no one wanted to walk away from. Armor class, spells, fancy and magic.
Fancy and magic, oh yeah. We can't listen back to what we've done from the perspective of someone who's not familiar. But I think the vast majority of what we talk about when the rules do come into play, it's going to sound very familiar, like you say.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was what I felt when we first tried it, and I ran a bit of the Abomination Vault.
Yeah.
An awful lot of it's very similar to playing 5e, but there are some subtle and, quite interesting changes. Things that are just ever so slightly different that that make the game, some people would think better, some people would think not as good. I like the changes, most of them. I'm a big fan. The action economy is, from a DM's perspective, different. but much easier.
Much easier.
And then some of the earlier editions of the games where you had swift actions, free actions, full round actions. I mean, this was in the 3.5 era, even into Pathfinder First Edition. So now you have 3 things you can do in a round. It encompasses everything that you do. So movement, your attacking action, casting spells, whatever it is you want to do, breaks down into 1 to 3 slots. Some things are just 1, like a move or an attack. Some things like a spell might be 1, 2, or 3 actions, and that tends to mean those spells have different effects. If you do it as a 1-action spell, it's short and limited power. If you do it as a 3-action spell, it tends to have a bigger impact.
So, for example, you could move.
Yeah.
You could move and then attack and move. In 5th edition, you're probably used to a situation whereby you can break your move up. In Pathfinder 2, that doesn't apply anymore. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you've got that free interaction. You could run down a corridor and open a door and run into a room, and the opening of the door is free. In Pathfinder 2, that costs you as against your 3 actions. There seem to be, I'm hostage to fortune here, there seem to be fewer discussions around what you can get done because Pathfinder 2 tends to be a lot more granular and specific. If you want to know how long it takes you to do something, it'll be written down somewhere.
Yeah.
The other thing, as Graeme just touched on, is that some activity, I think they're called activities, cost you more than 1 action just out the gate. There are some spells that it costs you 2 of your 3 actions to cast, so you can move and cast on those spells. And there are some spells where, depending upon how many actions you dedicate to the casting of them, can actually bump up the effect. I think heal is one of those, is that right?
Yeah, I think heal, you can do different degrees of healing, including ranged healing if you use more actions.
So 3 actions, I think that's the number one thing that jumps out at you when you read Pathfinder 2.
It's certainly one of them, and it's a great simple mechanic that seems to allow you to do everything you want to do, but just makes adjudicating the difference between different types of actions or remembering what things are a heck of a lot simpler.
You still have reactions, just like in D&D, so you can still, for example, ready an action and have a reaction that's triggered. And actually, they use the reaction mechanic a little bit more in Pathfinder than they do in D&D. The one I like is grab an edge, which is a reaction. If you fall off the edge of a cliff, you've got a reaction where you can make a grab an edge attempt in order to stop yourself falling.
Yeah, I quite like the new raise a shield action, which makes a shield an interesting thing that you have to remember to actually have active.
Yeah. What are the other big changes, do you think, Graeme?
Degrees of success.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It kind of makes every bonus you have important. So basically you have a staged series of successes and failures. So the standard
so you're rolling a
success
d20 and you're looking for a target number, a DC. Just like in D&D, readers, you'll recognize all of this. The target number you might have might be an armor class. It might be the difficulty of a particular
saving
skill
throw
check or whatever. Or a saving throw. Yeah, right. It's binary in D&D 5th edition. But for rolling a 20 or a 1, it's binary. You either make it or you don't. But Graeme, in Pathfinder, it works differently.
It works differently. If you beat your target number by 10, you have a critical success. And depending on the nature of the thing you're doing, that has benefits for you. So it might be a save and you're taking no damage, or it might be the critical hit where you do double damage, for example. You've got your normal success, and on the other side, you've got the critical failure. So 10 less than the target number, you critically fail. This is most visible, I think, in saving throw type scenarios.
Yes.
That makes things interesting.
And like you say, it makes bonuses really, really material. They're really relevant. +1 or +2 might be the difference between succeeding or failing, but it might also be the difference between a hit and a critical hit. You no longer only get 1 on 20. So critical hits come thick and fast.
And a natural 20 always shifts your level of success up by 1. So if you missed but roll a natural 20, it becomes success. If you ordinarily succeeded, you roll a 20, it becomes critical success. And the same is true on a 1. Even if you had hit or saved, you'd had a success, it drops down 1 level. So it becomes potentially a failure or a critical failure.
I looked at that mechanic when I first started reading the rules and thought there's a lot more maths. There are more rules in Pathfinder 2 and there is more fiddliness.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will burn past the period of unfamiliarity and this will all get slicker. But
we have played it a little bit and it comes back.
Yeah. Yes, it does come back. You do get very used to it very quickly. Because of the different levels of success, it's not just like hit or miss, save or fail. There are ramifications of how well you do in any particular instance, and then that makes combat perhaps a little richer. Another thing that makes combat a little richer, I think, is that one of the consequences of the way the rules are set up, I don't know how much I should emphasize this, but a general sense is that characters must coordinate between themselves. Teamwork pays is a phrase I've heard about Pathfinder 2, because if you can buy somebody +1 or +2,
you can make quite a big difference. Yeah,
it makes a big difference.
It's definitely something people talk about. We'll see, I guess, how well we find that works.
Yeah, and also how well you lot
are prepared to be.
Yeah, right. I think there is quite a bit of teamwork between a set of players who've played D&D for a long time together. But there are also certain players who do their own thing. Diplomatically quiet. You've got 3-action economy. You've got this degrees of success mechanic. What else stands out to you, Graeme?
Well, I guess character building. There are a lot of choices for the player to make.
Almost bewildering.
Almost, but I guess it means you're always adding something. It doesn't look, and we'll find out as we progress, like there are going to be dead spots or boring levels. You're perpetually adding something from either your ancestry, your background, your class, more feats.
Oh, yes. Well, so we should talk about that briefly. Ancestry is what used to be labelled race. Sometimes other games it's labelled heritage, but effectively you're talking about, are you a dwarf, are you an elf, are you whatever. Background is what you did before you started adventuring. Then you've got class, which is exactly like class as you may understand it from Dungeons & Dragons. Feats are a little bit more like the feats from 3rd edition than they are the feats in D&D. D&D, they're a swap in.
Yeah.
You could trade in an ability bump.
Whereas in Pathfinder 2, you've got a whole set of class-based abilities or feats and some general abilities or feats which you pick from as you progress. And these allow you to create quite individual-looking characters. A little bit like the 3rd level choice you get in, I think it's 3rd level, isn't it, in 5th edition, where
D&D 5th edition,
you get sort of specialism.
There's more at 1st level. There are more choices to make at 1st level in Pathfinder. And my sense with D&D 5th was that 1st level was like get you on the board, get you up and running, which is a very nice piece of design because a new player just gets straight into it. 2nd level, they get you used to the idea that you might improve something, make a choice, but the amount of experience to get from 1st to 2nd and then in turn from 2nd to 3rd was way, way lower. 3rd level was when it's like your character has survived 1st and 2nd level. You've got used to the ideas. Now you've got to make some properly material choices about the way your character is going to go. You might pick a fighting style.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah, fighting style, I think, is one. You could do it through the clerics. You've got like the war priest or the cloistered cleric.
Yes.
Those sort of choices where you're determining quite big aspects of your character because you get a lot of your abilities in one hit. I think
in Pathfinder, there's more at 1st level. You make more decisions.
Yeah.
But that at every level, because you've got all these different pillars that your character is based upon, the system draws on those pillars at every level.
Yeah.
There's a choice for you to be making. What used to be the case, this is just my sense of things, in 3rd edition Pathfinder 1, was that there were definitely opportunities to pick the perfect path as you went through levels, picking exactly the right feats, dipping into other classes in order to build characters that were mechanically optimized.
Yeah.
Which is a game in itself. And there were websites devoted to the best way to build a rogue, blah, 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 which we sort of did a little bit of. It's fun to play around with, especially with character builders where you can kind of constantly flick switches. And Pathfinder gives you a lot of those choices at the same time, but you're not going to win character building, at least not with the rules as they are presented in the core books. Who knows what supplements will do to keep that balance. But it's quite difficult to win the game of making the best character. It's more about having genuinely meaningful decisions about the sort of flavour and the style of character that you want to run. But would you say that's broadly fair?
Yeah, I think so. And you're making decisions and investing in certain aspects of your character, and then the mechanics through a kind of proficiency and training level give you a
training in skills we're not going to get into. Yeah, there are some things we aren't going to talk about today, readers.
But give you a ratcheting bonus, so your proficiency is incrementing with your level and your level of expertise. So you go from untrained through to trained expert.
Again, readers, skills work just like skills in D&D.
Yeah.
You use your attribute, then you add your skill number and a proficiency bonus. Again, just like in D&D, your proficiency bonus moves a little differently in Pathfinder 2 than it does in 5th edition, but it's the same principle. You're adding that to a D20, trying to hit a target.
Yeah.
But there is an extra level, which is this sort of training level against the skill. Honestly, I'm not 100% comfortable with how that works. I don't mean I have a problem with it. I just mean I'm not fluent in it yet. So as we play, perhaps we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you a mechanic which I think is really, really different?
Yep.
There is no advantage and disadvantage in Pathfinder 2.
True.
Pathfinder 2, all of that is represented by either the difficulty class of the task you're trying to attempt or the save you're trying to make, and the bonuses you put against it. There is no equivalent. Another big difference is there's no attunement in Pathfinder 2. There's something a little bit similar, but it's nowhere near as limiting. It doesn't really resemble the attunement mechanic from D&D.
No,
so
Pathfinder
you don't have...
has that kind of high magic, lots of items.
Yes. There is a mechanic, I can't remember the name. Is it something like investment or something? Which stops you just being a complete Christmas tree of little magical items wandering around pretending to be a character. But it isn't as strict as saying effectively you've only ever got really 3 magic items in play at any given time that are of any use.
Yeah.
There is still concentration.
Yeah.
It's called sustain. I'm just thinking of the things that used to bother us a little bit about.
Yeah.
So you can sustain spells, same idea. You effectively have to dedicate one of those
actions,
one or more of those 3 actions we were talking about earlier, in order to keep spells running.
Which I like.
You can have more than one going at a time, as long as you've got the actions to spend to sustain them.
Yep.
Neat little mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just now going through my head for little differences, similarities, just to mop up. We've covered the big stuff, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other thing that we will hear about in due course, the death and dying, healing and recovery is slightly different.
Yeah, it's slightly different. But again, recognisable.
Oh yeah, very similar. You get 3 flat check. So you just roll a d20 needing 10 plus however dying you are.
Right, so there's a thing called the dying condition. There are a lot of conditions in Pathfinder 2. We are not going to get into this because I'm worried about this getting too fiddly. But whereas you've got a condition in Dungeons & Dragons like restrained or frightened, you have the same in Pathfinder, but they have a number next to them to represent how severe that condition is. One of those conditions is called the dying condition, and you get that when you drop to 0 hit points. So you're dying at 1. So the equivalent of a death save from D&D, you make flat checks, which is just a naked, not literally, Graeme, put your clothes back on. A straight D20 roll against the target, and the target is 10 plus your dying condition number. So if you're dying 1, you're trying to get an 11. If you get an 11, you go back to dying 0 and you stabilize, just like D&D. So it's very, very similar. Your dying condition goes up if you fail that first roll to dying 2. Now your target number is a 12 and so forth. You hit dying 4, that's it. Goodbye, character. Not enormously more lethal, but it's...
No, I mean, we haven't seen a massive amount of character deaths in Abomination Vaults.
Well, I've had 2 characters. I've got a 50% survival rate.
Oh, well, Graeme. Okay.
I had a gunslinger, and I don't anymore.
Okay.
I think the less said about that, the better. Now I have a rogue that's still, at time of publication...
Still with us.
I
think the other thing that we missed before we got onto dying, actually...
Yeah.
Multiple attacks.
Oh, yes.
I think are really well handled. So every time you make another attack, it'd be called a strike.
Yes. Which is what you would call the attack action.
The attack action. The first one's fine. The second one, you're...
-5.
-5, is it?
-5 on the second one. And then you're -10 on the third one.
Which...
the map. It's called multiple attack penalty, the map,
Which is really interesting, especially if you play, and we did when we played the Abomination Bolts, you play critical fumbles using the Pytho critical fumble deck. Makes it very interesting. You have to think about, am I going to take that third attack? Or am I at so much risk of a fumble that I'm not going to do it? I thought that added a really interesting...
100% does. It also makes life easier in terms of, in D&D you've got maybe a feat that you can take or a class feature that allows you to use a bonus action to make an additional attack, like two-weapon fighting, whatever, something like that. Pathfinder 2 is like, none of that applies. You have 3 actions a turn, and this is the rule.
You can attack with each of them.
I think there are class features and feats that reduce the map. Is that true? We haven't got high enough. We only just started.
There might be. Really know. I'm not sure there are. There are types of weapon that allow you to use a slightly lower...
There's a slightly lower map for some weapons. Agile weapons. Yeah. Subsequent attacks after your first, the penalty is a little bit lower. Again, a whole load of granularity about weapon styles and combat styles that we're not going to get into, that we'll learn as we go. Is there anything else? I think we're kind of done.
I think that's a lot of the things that come to mind. Yeah. It's similar. It has perhaps more crunch.
Much more crunch. Readers, you'll recognise it straight away. As soon as we start playing, you already speak Pathfinder 2. It's like, I don't know, being able to speak...
Swiss German and High German.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not exactly the same, but you'll understand the conversation pretty much straight away. Quick summary before we go. What you've lost from D&D is the advantage mechanic, the attunement mechanic. What you gain in Pathfinder 2 is this thing called the 3-action economy. You get 3 actions at a turn. I've gone to that in some detail. Degrees of success. It's not just a question of whether or not you do or do not make a check or hit with an attack. It's a question of how well you do, and that unlocks different consequences. And in terms of characters, there are many more choices when you make a character, and every level has got something where you're picking something that's material. There was something else. Oh, yeah. Well, let's not get into multi-classing. No. It's complicated. I think that kind of sums it up.
That's enough to get you into the game and to learn.
That's enough to get you into it. Thanks, Graeme.
Thanks, Mike. Look forward to seeing the readers in the first episode of Outlaws of Alkenstar.
Yes, which should be out when you hear this, readers. If you're listening to this the first episode, you'll discover it's a Session 0 where there's not much going on in terms of rules and dice rolling and so forth. There is just some stuff about the characters, some of the detail around that, which hopefully our little chat will make a little bit clearer. Maybe. I don't know. If you're listening to this second, well, I hope you enjoyed the Session 0, and this little chat will be much more relevant when we get into the meat of the adventure. This isn't an intro, and this isn't an episode, but nevertheless, I will take this opportunity to implore you to rate and review our little radio program on your podcast app of choice. Talk to us through social media. The reason that Graeme and I are recording this is because Thomas, thanks very much for your comment. That was I think it's on Facebook or Instagram. Or email us at hello@billowinghilltop.com. That's it. What happens in the new adventure? What awaits our new set of heroes in the Outlaws of Alkenstar? Well, we're not going to find out now, Graeme. Well, maybe you've already found out. Anyway, you'll find out or something.
Listen to it.
Yeah, join us for the adventure in whichever episode that you happen to... Yeah, this is falling apart, Graeme.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. Completely.
The Billowing Hilltop podcast is a Billowing Hilltop production. Outlaws of Alkenstar and Punks in a Powder Keg are copyright Paizo. Punks in a Powder Keg was written by Vanessa Hoskins. Music is from Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com and is used with thanks under the Creative Commons license. Additional music and sound effects come from the wonderful Sirenscape. All other original material is copyright Billowing Hilltop. Thanks for listening.